Hey everyone, welcome back to Rob's Car World. I thought I'd have a cup of coffee this morning in my world's okayest firefighter cup that my daughter got me. This channel is all about automobiles, of course. It's news, satire, and car finds. You know, every now and then I'll post a car that I find because I'm always looking at cars. I look at 1,000 cars every morning, just search out for cars to buy. The news I'm up on, and sometimes the news could be satire as well. So today's conversation is going to be about stock value. I really don't have it in any particular big closing or order. So I'm going to take you through Ford Motor Company, General Motors, and Tesla. And the focus is going to be on Tesla because we have a lot to talk about Tesla over the next 4 years, especially when it comes to electric vehicles, and especially when it comes to him, Elon Musk, having a front seat in the new administration. So he's going to have a lot of influence with President Trump, and it's going to be interesting how this pans out. You know, car companies have to plan pipelines for 10 years. I was a product planner with Volvo, and when we used to sit down, we would run car plans out for at least the next 10 years. And it was somewhat comforting to know that you're going to have sedans, you're going to have wagons, you're going to have SUVs. Uh, the drive lines would change with emission standards and anticipation of zero emissions and things like that. But the electric vehicles have really pumped in there a big dynamic change. And we'll talk about Ford Motor Company first. Ford Motor Company stock, when we look at their stock, is trading at $11.39. It closed at, I think, $10.90 over the weekend. And when you look at Ford Motor stock and you look at a 5 year pushback, you can see that a lot of car companies during the lull of COVID and then the boom times of COVID, people going into the showrooms paying $2,000 over MSRP for a car. Inventories were light. Ford Motor Company, like everybody else, throttled back on incentives, and the consumers were just coming in because they were bored and everybody wanted to get a new car coming out of COVID. I don't blame them. I bought motorcycles. But yeah, so you can see that the price of the stock was as low as $5, $6 a share. Then it started going up and it hit a high of $25 a share, and that was during the boom times of coming out of COVID. But something also happened very dynamically with Ford Motor Company that they end up really having some problems with. Back in the fall of 2022, Ford was feeling really pumped up about profits, and everybody was going with a vision of having full environment electric vehicles by 2035 and 2020. So Farley got on this whole bandwagon and he just basically messed things up. I got to tell you, this is my own personal opinion, nothing bad about him. But he just basically went in there and said, he came out with a program in fall of 2022 that required dealers to meet a certain standard to sell electric vehicles. They had to do charging stations, they had to do specific training, they had to do certain pricing to maintain a consistent pricing and sell EVs at the initial asking price. So yeah, they were looking to price fix, EVs, which is not legal to do, but this is what they went out with. And that they had to be e-commerce driven, meaning that they have to know how to work the internet and such and sell cars online. And they had a delivery. Delivery was to offer remote delivery for vehicle purchases like Carvana and things like that. So when this thing came out, it was basically you're either in or you're either out. Ford Motor Company said the dealers are going to have to spend between $500,000 and $1 million to adapt to this new program. And about half of Ford dealers subscribed because Ford made it very clear that if you don't go on board with this new EV program back in the fall of 2022, you would have no future with Ford Motor Company. So of course I'm going to go with it, right? I'm scared. I don't want to lose my franchise. I was a franchise dealer. I don't want to lose my franchise, right? Then what happened was, and I wrote about this on my Facebook page here, and now the auto industry. It's a good video. It basically takes you through, are we a gas company? Are we an EV? And I called it duck season, and tongue in cheek, but it really shed some light on the ultimatum that Ford Motor Company gave its dealers: either get on board with the EV future or just go home. And then what happened? Well, Ford basically back in June of this year, Ford Motor Company said they will soon allow all their dealers to sell electric vehicles, reversing their more selective allocation system in an effort to boost slower than expected EV sales. So they basically threw everything out the window. And can you imagine if you're a dealer and you're dealing with this type of trauma? Especially smaller dealers, the guys that don't have big franchises, they just have a single point Ford dealer. Well, anyway, Ford Motor Company stock hasn't done much since then, and even with the announcements they made, Ford Motor Company, their stock has been trailing at $10, $11 a share for a very, very long time, with the exception to the boost that they had here that Mr. Farley felt very pumped up about. Other than that, it kind of collapsed. So Ford Motor Company's in this situation, and we're going to talk about Ford stock. I have a little spreadsheet that I'll take you through, and we'll get into Ford. So hold all these conversations on Ford until we look at the spreadsheet. General Motors, on the other hand, there's that big wave, post COVID, bam, bam, everybody's doing great. People paying more for their cars. General Motors and Ford Motor Company, they're selling 65% of most of their cars are now not cars, they're light trucks, pickup trucks in particular. And pickup trucks are a cash cow for General Motors, Ford, and even Chrysler too. Well, I don't have Chrysler on this analysis, but I want to just focus on General Motors and Ford. But General Motors also followed a similar path of Ford Motor Company and then leveled out after their robust period during COVID when they didn't have to have incentives. They actually didn't even have to advertise much. So they throttled back on all their variable expenses as a company. And the dealers also throttled back on a lot of their expenses too when it came to advertising because they didn't have that much product. So everybody was selling cars for big grosses, salespeople and dealer principals. Everybody was making money. For General Motors and Ford and everybody else was making big money too. And then what happened is the people that needed cars or wanted a car fell off the radar, and now they went back into incentives, just like the old days. The inventories are going up and such. But General Motors stock has been doing fairly well recently, and a lot of that has to do with some sales gains and some steady management, I think, based versus Ford Motor Company. So we'll look at General Motors as well. The next company we'll talk about is Tesla. Tesla is one of my favorite brands to discuss. But to do a preamble before we start talking about Tesla, let's look at the J.D. Power initial quality study. The J.D. Power study comes out and it talks about the initial quality. I think it's within the first 90 days of ownership. And when you look at Chevrolet, they came in second, which is amazing. Hyundai and Kia also came in the top 5. Buick, another GM brand, was up there in the top 10. And then you look at the very, very bottom, you'll see brands like, oh my goodness, Volvo, how could they be so low? And oh my goodness, Tesla is like the worst. So Tesla scores at 266 problems per 100 vehicles. A lot of their problems that Tesla's had goes way beyond just software and telematics and such. A lot of their problems are in the delivery and promise of the brand, and then the brand not meeting their expectations. Now, Tesla does not have a traditional dealership body. Dealerships do a much, much better job in coaching and working with their customers because they want these customers to come back. They're local. The dealer principals of dealerships normally have a very good focus on satisfying their customers. I know that's hard to believe, but it is true. And, Tesla's a factory store. They have a big turnover. So they don't really have traditional service centers like dealerships have. Some may say that, factories can do it better than dealers. But again, I feel that a dealership owner will have much more of a focus on the day-to-day operations. So anyway, Tesla is not as great of a car company from a product point of view as a lot of people will think they are. They do great software, probably the best software out there. But when it comes to the actual car that they end up delivering, well, I'm a firefighter. I specialize in rescue, and we do extrication, and we go to car accidents and such. And my own personal opinion has nothing to do with any documentation. I've been to Tesla wrecks. I've seen these cars in accidents. And to be honest with you, they are not a Volvo. They are not a Mercedes-Benz, and they're not a BMW. The way the cars are built and the sheet metal and the surround of the car, from my own personal experiences, I feel that the cars crumble up much quicker than luxury cars of the same value. So Tesla is really, I think they're just stamping, some inexpensive kind of platforms, but they do a great job, of course, on the EV. And but I think a Kia and a Hyundai probably build better platforms from an integrity point of view. Now, again, I could be wrong. I mean, if you look at the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, I'm sure their crash tests are excellent, but I just get this tacit feeling that a Tesla is not as well made as some of these other more expensive cars like the Volvo, Mercedes Benz, and BMW. Again, we're in that same price point, right, folks? So if you look at Tesla stock is at $352 a share. Previous close was 339, so it's going up. And if you look at the past 5 years, they had some, stock splits and all, but they also had that big gain during COVID and coming out of COVID and then leveling off. And now they're on a rise. And mostly they're on a rise because, there's a lot of anticipation. When you find out what Tesla somewhat like, I don't know, Google and tech stocks, they trade above the natural tendency of what the company earns, right? So Ford Motor Company, when you look at their stock at $11 a share and you look at Tesla, I'll have a spreadsheet to show you. It's almost like the people at Ford are going to just, jump out of the window. How's it possible that Tesla's worth $352 a share? But they are. And it's fairly bullish for Tesla right now because Elon Musk has put himself in the right seat when it comes to impact and influence of the new administration when it comes not to only electric vehicles, but when it comes to the automobile industry in itself. And I think you're seeing more of that bullish trend that is basically like a game stock type of stock again. The stock's going to go to $500 a share. Everybody's going to get all excited, and then there's going to be a massive correction or not. It's just, a lot of what we see in the stock market today is more about gambling than it is about fundamentals, unfortunately. And I think that Ford Tesla, relationship kind of points to that. However, Tesla is much more advanced of a car company than Ford is when it comes to innovation. Tesla recently, what they recently did was the government started the new president is coming in, and they're talking about repealing the $7,500 federal tax credit for EVs. Now that's significant, right? So if they do away with the $7,500 tax credit for buying an EV, they're saying that EVs can in fact drop like 30%, and it can really stall how electric vehicles work. And then during the week, when they came out with this announcement that they might consider taking that $7,500 EV tax credit away, which I would bet right now that they will, Elon Musk said that's a good idea. Let's do it. And then people were saying, why is it a good idea? Elon Musk builds electric vehicles. How could that be beneficial for him? Well, the way it works is that the tax credits, and if you look at another one of my postings that I did on now the auto industry, there's a video here on YouTube that will talk about EV tax credits made easy. So it's a very complex thing. Last year, they introduced a new inflation reduction bill, and that impacted EV tax credits. So tax credits were already being impacted. But the reason that Elon Musk is kind of okay with it all is because he expensed all his tax credits already, and he's not getting any more. So his cars are sold without tax credits when you buy a Tesla. So that's a story right there. But if you want to learn more about tax credits, you can go on my now the auto industry. There's a link in the bio for this YouTube channel if you want to watch that as well. So now let's get into a little bit of fun. Let's get into the actual numbers a little bit. This was assembled on Saturday. I had nothing to do, which I normally do stuff like this. So I looked at Tesla, Ford, and GM side by side. So I said, okay, let's look at sales. Tesla sold 1,200 sales, 1,200,000 sales estimated so far year to date. Ford 1.5 million and General Motors 3.1 million. Now these are global sales, folks. Okay, so these are big numbers. Sales growth, Tesla is almost up 9%, which is quite an achievement. They are delivering on the ability to build cars. I mean, Tesla over the past 7 years struggled to build cars. Now they are building more and more cars. They have 5 models. They have 450 outlets in the country to have the cars serviced. Um, where Ford Motor Company is up 1.4%, and General Motors is down a little bit this year, 2.4%. Ford Motor Company has 30 models. GM has 50. These are global. Ford has 10,000 dealers. That's a negative, right? That could be a problem. And General Motors has 12,000 dealers. Now, Tesla, 450 dealers. Now, we're talking globally, right? So 450 dealers, you're in that realm of being like Mercedes Benz, BMW, and the the like Volvo and such. Ford Motor Company is in the fast food business. They're McDonald's, so is General Motors. This 450 number might just be U.S. outlets, not global. I don't think I had global numbers. But anyway, Tesla has a 19% market share. They're up at 34% on EVs. Ford Motor Company has a 5% share, and General Motors has a 7% share. JD Power ranking of Tesla at 34th at 35, as I showed you, Ford at 9 out of 35, and GM second out of 35. Number of employees, Tesla has 140,000, Ford has 177,000, and GM has 163. Number of assembly plants, 5 for Tesla, 30 for Ford, 40 for General Motors. Percent of China components, these are estimated numbers, folks. Tesla has a higher percentage of China components because a lot of their batteries are sourced from China. So they got a 40% risk of China components. Ford Motor Company has about a 30%, and General Motors has 30%. Now, we're talking things like not only batteries, we're talking front suspension, wheel hubs, suspension links. We're talking rubber moldings and rubber strippings. We're talking electrical conduits and electrical wiring harnesses, plugins, all those little plugins that you see on electrical plugins and things like that. A lot of them are made in China. So when these parts come in from China to be assembled here in North America, if there is a tariff on China goods and goods coming in, it will impact Tesla, Ford, and General Motors. So I doubt there's going to be an immediate rush to put 60% tariffs on everything from China without Elon Musk and other people looking at this saying, hey, wait a minute, we can't get that crazy. You know what I mean? That might be too much. Yeah, it could happen, though, but it's going to really change the way car manufacturers source their cars. There is a pension liability when you look at pension liability. Now, Tesla doesn't report that too openly, but Ford Motor Company has a $67 billion pension liability, and GM has an $86 million pension liability. Tesla doesn't have unions, and Tesla has a pension. They're a new company, but they don't have dealers as well, so they cut the middleman out. They can work with more gross profit per car because they're not sharing the profit with the dealer. Now, they still have to build service facilities and showrooms and things like that, but they control it in a much better way than Ford Motor Company or General Motors. What does that mean for the customer? Who benefits more, the customer or the manufacturer? Yeah, I guess you have to experience these brands to know. But traditionally, a good dealership can take care of the customer better than a manufacturer can. When you look at total revenue, this is a trailing revenue. $97 billion for Tesla, $182 billion for Ford. Now look at that revenue. It's double the revenue of Tesla, but yet Ford stock is only worth $11 a share. GM and Ford about the same level of revenue. On the profitability, the gross profits, it's $17 million versus 14 versus 21. So Tesla is able to grab more gross profit from their revenue than Ford or General Motors. And that's, again, why is that? Well, like I mentioned before, a lot of reasons. Less assembly plants, no unions and things like that. Operating expenses, almost the same. 9.4 million, 10.2, 9.6. Pre-tax income, 8.4 million, 3 million, and 12 million. So here you got a pre-tax income with General Motors at 12.2 billion, and their stock is not anywhere near where Tesla is. I talk about interest expenses. I won't get into that too much. Inventory costs, people hold inventory. The market cap is the big one. The market cap is the fundamental baseline of what the company has a capitalization for based on shares outstanding. So you have Tesla's at $1.1 trillion, Ford at 44 billion, and GM at 64 billion. So that is the big difference in the value of the company being traded way above, uh, you know, the fundamentals of the company. So, in normal times, this would be a risky company to buy shares in. But with Tesla, with Elon Musk sitting in the front seat with President Trump over the next 4 years, I don't know. It might be a very safe bet to continue to invest in Tesla and short the hell out of Ford Motor Company. Excuse my English. Gross profit for per net vehicle retail. This is interesting. Tesla makes about $14,000 on every car they sell. Ford makes about $9,000, and GM makes $7,000. These are estimated numbers, folks. But if it is possible, when you look at Ford Motor Company, they make $10,000 on every pickup truck they sell. Ford Motor Company has pickups that go over $70,000, $80,000, and but they have to share that with their dealer body, where Tesla doesn't have to share that with the dealer body. And I think when you look at Tesla's MSRP averaging, they're probably about $20,000 more than the average Ford or General Motors car. Um, Income per employee based on pre-tax income, based on how many employees you have. Tesla makes $59,000 per employee, and Ford Motor Company only makes $17,000 per employee. So you can see some weaknesses in Ford Motor Company looking at this. Market cap as a percent of income, 13,428% for Tesla. So that again proves to you that the company is trading way above, some baseline fundamentals. But again, I'm not a I was a stockbroker, but I'm not anyone that's very current with the stock market other than just looking at numbers. So 52-week high, Tesla at 352, 52-week low, 361, as low as $138 a share on the low side. I'm sorry, the high side was 361. And again, you can look at Ford and you can look at General Motors as well. So in summary, what is Robb's summary when it comes to Tesla, Ford, and GM? Well, the way I look at Tesla, Ford, and GM is the way I watch television. For me, Ford is ABC, GM is CBS, and Chrysler is NBC. And where is Tesla? Well, Tesla's joined the rank and file of being much more modern. They're Netflix. People are watching Netflix and subscribing to streaming movies and series and TV shows and things like that in a series, binge watching series. I mean, you just go to anybody's house, they're binge watching a series constantly. So Tesla is more of a modern car company. And I really believe, what does ABC, CBS, and NBC mean to anybody anymore? What does Ford Motor Company, General Motors, or Chrysler mean to anybody anymore? I don't know. Maybe we'll answer those in other news class videos that I put together. But for right now, that's my summary. So thank you for joining me today. I appreciate having you here. We're going to be spending a lot of time in discussing EVs. We're going to be discussing Tesla over the next couple of years. I think there's a lot to look forward to. I think the glass is more half full than half empty. I think we should be in some decent times in the economy over the next 4 years. And, with some, of course, issues globally that's going on with wars and such. But again, I'm not a stockbroker. I don't pretend to be. I'm not telling you to buy a stock or sell a stock. Leave that up to the professional people. I'm just a car guy. So Robb's Car World is all about news, satire, and car finds. And I appreciate having you here today. If you like this channel, please subscribe and please share with friends that like cars. And we'll see you here. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.